Have a seat, today's tea is bitter, but still sweeter than the price the villain in this story is about to pay. May's red ledger has just turned to a new page. Are you ready to claim justice with Reddit revenge tales? What do you do when a stranger texts you and says, "Your husband is sleeping with my wife. I was rinsing my coffee mug when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. Hi, I'm David. I think your husband Ryan is having an affair." My first thought, scam, some sick prank. Then he sent a screen recording. I watched my husband's name glow at the top of the thread. Like it belonged there. "I miss you. I can't wait to see you." And then the one that punched the air out of me. "I love you." The faucet kept running. The sink started to overflow. I slid down onto the kitchen floor, shaking so hard I couldn't even hit pause. And that's when David added, "This is only the beginning. I have more. If you want the full story, how I uncovered what he hid and what I did next, hit subscribe and come with me, because this is where everything starts." I shut the faucet off hard, like I could stop what I'd just seen. Water had spilled over the sink and was creeping across the counter, dripping onto the floor. I grabbed a dish towel and wiped in fast. Angry circles, anything to keep my hands busy. Then I hit play again. The screen recording kept rolling, and my heartbeat got so loud. It felt like it was in my ears. I paused on a few lines, his name, her name, the little time stamps, then snapped screenshots and sent them to myself. Just in case it all disappeared later, I told myself, don't do this over text. Wait until he's home. Look him in the face. And then I still poured the dog's food. I filled her water bowl. I watched her eat like it was a normal Tuesday. I checked the clock. 2 hours until Ryan got home. It didn't feel like 2 hours. It felt like 2 years. Sitting there, listening to my own breathing. I started replaying the last few months like security footage. Ryan had been working late more often, always with a casual shrug, like it was no big deal. His phone started living face down on the counter. If it lit up, he'd flip it over fast and say, "Just work." He'd take it into the shower, like a teenager afraid someone might touch it. And at night, he'd scroll and smile at the screen in this quiet, private way. The kind of smile that used to be for me. I remember asking once, softly, trying to sound relaxed, "Who's got you laughing like that?" He didn't even look up. Work chat. Back then, I wanted to believe him. I wanted my life to stay simple. But now, with that video sitting in my phone like a loaded gun, one thought kept landing harder each time. The signs were there. I just kept choosing not to see them. With the video still sitting in my camera roll, I did the thing I hate admitting out loud. I started checking everything that used to feel normal. I opened our shared calendar. The past few weeks were stacked with late meetings, little gray blocks that always seemed to land after 5. I scrolled back farther and realized how often those blocks showed up. Like a pattern I'd trained myself not to notice. Then I thought about his drive home. He used to take the same route. The same exit, like clockwork. Lately, he'd come in from a different direction and toss out some casual reason traffic. Construction, whatever. I walked to the coat rack and picked up his jacket. It smelled off. Not sweat, not his soap. Something sweet and clean that didn't belong in our house. When I asked once, he smiled like I was silly. A coworker hugged me. "Hello." I nodded. I said nothing. And then I leaned in and smelled the collar again, just to be sure, and I hated myself for needing to. By the time Ryan pulled into the driveway, I'd reheated dinner twice and still hadn't taken a single bite. The dog perked up the second she heard his keys. My body did the opposite, tight, braced, like it knew what was coming. He walked in like any other night, leaned down and kissed my cheek soft. Automatic. "Hey, babe." Then he glanced toward the stove. "Dinner's ready." I watched his face while he said it, searching for anything guilt, nerves, a crack in the calm. But he looked normal, almost cheerful, like he hadn't just been writing "I love you" to someone else. My phone felt heavy in my pocket, like it had its own gravity. I said, "Can we talk for a minute?" He didn't flinch. He didn't go quiet. He just nodded and reached for a plate. That call made my skin crawl. I pulled my phone out, lifted it between us, and then, at the last second, I lowered it again, because I realized something terrifying. Once I asked, my life would never go back. Once I lowered my phone at dinner, I didn't magically feel better. I just felt trapped inside my own silence. Ryan talked about his day like nothing had happened. I nodded at the right moments, pushed food around my plate, and waited until he went to shower. The second I heard the bathroom fan kick on, I texted David back. "Is this real? How do you know?" He replied fast, like he'd been holding his breath too. He told me he'd only just found out himself. He said his wife worked on the same team as Ryan, same department, same meetings, same late nights. Then he started sending details, dates, times, little pieces that lined up too neatly to be random. Lunch breaks, after-work check-ins, a stretch of weeks where things suddenly changed. And one name kept popping up, Lauren. I stared at it because Ryan had said it before casually, like it meant nothing. Lauren's funny. Lauren's great at her job. Now her name looked different, like a stain I couldn't scrub out. That night, I tried to sleep like a normal person. I turned off the lamp. I faced the wall. I told myself, just get through tonight. But my body wouldn't cooperate. My mind kept replaying that screen recording, the way his name sat at the top of the thread, like it belonged there. Ryan rolled over and put his back to me. I felt the mattress dip. Then the faint glow under the covers. That soft, familiar light that shouldn't mean anything except now it did. A second later, ting. Not loud, just enough. I didn't move. I didn't breathe too deep. I kept my eyes closed and made my face go slack like I was already asleep. The dog sighed at the foot of the bed. The house settled. Everything looked peaceful, but I was wide awake, counting each little notification. Sound like it was a drip from the faucet earlier, and that's when it hit me cold and clear. He wasn't working on us. He was still online. With someone else. I barely slept. When morning came, I moved like a robot coffee. Keys. Target, because doing something normal felt safer than thinking. The parking lot was already busy. Carts rattling. Moms juggling lists. Retirees moving slow and steady, like the world wasn't ending. Inside, I stood in front of the dish soap aisle and just froze. Dawn, palmolive, lemon, lavender. Too many choices for a brain that couldn't hold one simple truth. I kept staring like the bottles might tell me what to do next. A couple in their 60s shuffled past me, fingers laced together, arguing softly about which paper towels to buy. The kind of ordinary love you don't notice until you're starving for it. My throat tightened so fast it hurt. I swallowed hard, blinked, and whispered to myself, "Megan, keep it together. Just keep it together." At checkout, I tapped my card, grabbed the bag, walked to my car, and realized I'd forgotten half the things I came for. Like I'd left my mind back in that bed, listening to his phone light up. By the time I got home, keeping it together turned into something else. Watching, not in a dramatic way, just noticing the stuff I used to ignore because trust made life easy. Later that afternoon, I opened our account like I'd done 100 times to pay bills. My eyes snagged on a charge that didn't fit coffee in the middle of the day, at a place near his office, but not one he ever mentioned. Then another. A parking fee downtown on a weekday. Ryan hated paying to park. He'd complain about it like it was a personal insult. I clicked into the details, then pulled up the calendar. That day, he'd told me he was going to the gym after work. I could hear his voice saying it casual. Harmless. Nothing to question. I took a screenshot and set the phone down like it burned. I still didn't confront him. Not yet. But for the first time, the thought didn't feel dramatic. It felt factual. Maybe I don't actually know the man I married. And if that's true, what else don't I know? After that, I tried to do the mature thing. I picked a time after dinner, when the dog was settled, when the house was quiet, and told Ryan, "We need to talk tonight." He didn't say no. He just slid away from it. "Babe, I'm slammed," he said, already half looking at his phone. "Can we do it tomorrow?" Then, like he was smoothing a wrinkle in a sheet, he added, "Let's go out this weekend." somewhere nice, reset, and suddenly, he was sweet in a way that felt rehearsed, hand on my back when he passed me. A longer kiss, "I love you," said too quickly, like a button he could press to shut the whole thing down. I nodded, I smiled, I played along. Then I went to the laundry room, closed the door, and forwarded the screenshots to a private email I'd never used before, my hands steady. My stomach knot. That's when it hit me. I was living 2 lives now. The wife he expected, and the woman bracing for impact. The next evening, I stopped waiting for the right moment. There is no right moment for betrayal. I set my phone on the dinner table, face up, right between our plates. My voice came out calmer than I felt. I got a weird message yesterday. Ryan didn't even ask from who. He didn't laugh. He didn't look confused. He just stared at the screen, like he already knew what was on it. I tapped play. The screen recording rolled. His name at the top. The words underneath. The little hearts. The "I miss you." The "I love you." I watched his face tighten, jaw clenched, eyes flat, like he was calculating, not hurting. Finally he exhaled and said, "Someone hates me. They're trying to mess with us." I didn't raise my voice. I just asked one simple question, sharp, clean, impossible to wiggle out of. "Then why aren't you surprised they knew your name? And for the first time." He didn't have an answer. Ryan stared at the table for a long second, like he was buying time. Then he let out this heavy sigh, almost annoyed, and said, "Okay, it was just texting. Just texting." He leaned back in his chair and rubbed his forehead, like I was the headache. "It didn't go anywhere. It's done." I watched him carefully, waiting for the part where he'd look sorry, waiting for his voice to crack, waiting for anything that sounded like remorse. Instead he said, "I'm sorry you got hurt." Not "I'm sorry I did it." Not "I'm sorry I lied." He kept talking fast, controlled. I never meant for it to get this far. "You know, I love you." I was stupid, but even stupid sounded like a shortcut. Like a word you use when you don't want to say the real one. I felt my hands go cold on the edge of the table. My voice came out quiet and steady. "You're sorry you got caught," I said. "Not sorry you did it." He opened his mouth to argue, then closed it again. And that silence told me I was right. I tried to keep it practical, because that's what women do when their world is cracking. I asked, "Are you willing to leave that job?" Ryan didn't hesitate. "If you want me to." It sounded noble on the surface, but the way he said it too smooth, too easy, made my stomach tighten, like he was handing me a knife and calling it a gift. Because if he quit, he'd blame me. If he stayed, I'd never sleep again. Either way, I'd be the bad guy in his story. So I shook my head. "No, I'm not going to be the reason you resent me for the rest of your life." He nodded quickly, like he was relieved. "Too relieved," I said. "Then we need counseling. A real person in the room. No more. Trust me." Ryan's answer came immediately. "Yeah, absolutely. Whatever you need." That should have made me feel safer. It didn't. It made me feel like he'd been waiting for the script. And as he reached across the table to take my hand, all I could think was, if it's really over. Why does this feel like the beginning? After Ryan went to bed, I sat at the edge of the couch with my phone in my hand and called David. I didn't want to. I hated that my marriage now included a stranger's number. But I needed to know what he knew. David sounded exhausted, like he'd been living on adrenaline for days. He told me his wife denied it too. Same lines, same calm voice. "It's nothing. You're overreacting." Then he admitted something that made my skin go cold. He'd overheard a couple of calls, not on purpose at first, just walking into the garage and hearing her voice drop, hearing her laugh like she was 20 again. He said most of it happened on the drive home, the safe time, the in-between time when no one could see. I looked out the front window at Ryan's car parked in our driveway, perfectly normal under the porch light, and for the first time, I thought about checking the one place I'd never wanted to touch. The car. A few days later, we sat in a therapist's office with beige walls and a box of tissues on the table, like it was part of the furniture. "Doctor," Harris spoke gently, The way people do when they're trying not to spook something fragile, she asked Ryan. Straight to his face. Is the affair over? Ryan didn't glance at me. He didn't swallow hard. He didn't hesitate. He just said, yes, one clean word. Like a stamp. I watched his hands on his knees still. No shaking. No fidgeting. He looked practiced. Like he'd rehearsed the answer in the car on the way there. Doctor. Harris nodded and started talking about rebuilding trust, boundaries, transparency. I nodded too, because that's what you do when you're trying to be the reasonable wife in the room. But my stomach stayed tight the whole time. A gut feeling doesn't sound dramatic. It sounds quiet. And mine kept saying, he's still lying. After counseling, I tried to do what people always suggest date night. Like a reservation and a decent candle could patch a cracked foundation. I booked our usual place, the one where the servers knew Ryan's drink order, and we used to laugh without forcing it. Ryan showed up 15 minutes late, acting like it was nothing. He slid into the booth, kissed my cheek, and immediately set his phone on the table screen down. Then it lit up. He flipped it over, lit up again. He flipped it again, over and over. Like a nervous tick, I stared at the menu without reading a word. Finally, I asked, calm on purpose, are you here with me right now? His eyes snapped up. His voice sharpened. What do you want from me? Megan, if you don't trust me, how are we supposed to move forward? The whole table went quiet in my head. Not the restaurant, just me. Because that sentence wasn't about rebuilding. It was about shutting me up. And I went home knowing my gut wasn't wrong. When we got home, I didn't argue. I didn't beg. I went straight into the bathroom, shut the door, and finally let my face fall apart. The kind of cry you try to keep silent, because you don't want to give him the satisfaction of hearing it. I looked up at the mirror and barely recognized myself. Puffy eyes, tight jaw. My skin looked dull, like I'd been drained. I thought about what he'd said. If you don't trust me. And I remembered the part that still made me sick, how he deletes messages every day, how easy it is to erase a whole relationship with one swipe. I washed my face, then opened my laptop at the kitchen table and pulled up our accounts. Mortgage, utilities, insurance, the boring stuff that suddenly felt like life or death. And that's when the fear shifted. It wasn't just losing my husband. It was losing my stability, my home, my footing, my future. And I realized I had to start thinking like someone who might be alone. The next morning, Ryan kissed me goodbye like we were fine. He grabbed his travel mug, called the dog good girl, and backed out of the driveway like it was just another workday. I stood at the window until his taillights disappeared. Then I walked into the garage. The air smelled like cold concrete and old cardboard. His car sat there quiet, innocent-looking. I opened the driver's door and stared at the little details I'd never cared about: the charging cable coiled in the console, the indent in the seat where his wallet always hit, the dashcam tucked up behind the mirror like a secret. My hands hesitated over it. I hated what I was about to become, the wife who checks, the wife who searches. I pulled out the manual from the glove box and flipped through pages like my life depended on it. My heart was pounding, not from anger, fear, the kind that makes your fingers clumsy. When I finally found the menu and pressed play for the first time, my pulse spiked so hard, I thought I might throw up. The first clip was boring, just road noise and turn signals. A normal commute. For a second, relief rushed in so fast it almost made me dizzy. I told myself, see, you're spiraling. You're making this bigger than it is. I clicked the next file. More driving, more nothing. Then his voice, not the voice he uses with me. Not, how was your day? Ryan. This was softer, looser, like he was smiling with his whole chest. And then I heard it, a woman's laugh, close to the mic, like she was sitting right there with him. My fingers went numb on the screen. They started calling each other names, little private nicknames, the kind that only exist when two people think they're alone in the world. I leaned closer, like I could change what I was hearing, and then Ryan said it low. And certain something I can't remember him ever saying to me like that. I need you. I just sat there, staring at the dashboard, realizing This wasn't over. I kept listening, even though every part of me wanted to throw the phone across the garage. At first it was little things, him asking, same time, and her answering like it was a routine. Then it got clearer. They weren't talking about one mistake. They were planning. Lunch, she said. We'll meet at lunch, he answered. Yeah. The parking lot. The one by the back entrance. My throat tightened. I could picture it without trying. The painted lines. The sun glare on windshields. People walking past with no idea. Then Lauren laughed and said something like, "Just tell her you're staying late." Ryan said, "I will. She won't question it." They talked about cover stories like they were choosing takeout. I paused the audio and pressed my palm to my mouth, because nausea rose up fast. Hot. That's when the truth landed sharp and heavy. This wasn't a slip. This was a daily habit, and I was married to it. I didn't go back inside right away. I sat in Ryan's car, parked at the edge of our driveway, like I needed the distance. The steering wheel felt cold under my hands. My phone was warm from my grip. I hit play again. Ryan's voice came through steady, casual, like he was talking about errands. He described squeezing time in between meetings, between shifts, like cheating was just a scheduling problem. Lauren said, quiet but excited, "I want a new life, not a fling, not a crush, a life." And Ryan, my husband, laughed, a real laugh, light, happy. I stared past the dashboard at our house. The kitchen light was still on, the same light I'd stood under making dinner, feeding the dog, trying to be normal. Everything in that window looked safe, ordinary, but inside the car, I was hearing a different version of my marriage, one where I didn't exist, except as someone to manage. That's when I realized I was sitting between two worlds, my real home and his fake life, and I didn't know which one would win. I kept scrolling through the files until I hit a clip that made my hands go slick on the wheel. Lauren said, like it was nothing, "Backseat's better. No one can see." Ryan answered her too comfortable, like they'd said it 100 times. Then she dropped a number. 2 months. 2 months of this being normal for them. I sat there in his car, staring at the dash, and pulled up my calendar on my phone with my thumb shaking. I went back week by week, matching dates to the little timestamps in the audio, and then I saw it. The first time lined up right after my birthday getaway, the trip I planned down to the last detail. The hotel, the dinner reservation, the photos we took smiling like we were solid. I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white, because I'd been planning memories, and he'd been planning where to park. I didn't want to carry it alone anymore. My chest felt too tight, like there wasn't enough air in the car. So I called David. When he answered, I didn't do small talk. I couldn't. "I have audio," I said. From the car, there was a pause on the line. 4 seconds long enough that I thought the call dropped. Then he exhaled like he'd been punched. I have a couple clips too," he said quietly. "Not as much as that, but enough." And suddenly it wasn't just my marriage falling apart in my living room. It was his two strangers on 2 different couches, holding the same kind of proof. Trying to stay upright. David's voice went hard for a second. "They make you feel crazy," he said, "like you're the problem." Then he said the line that hit me straight in the face. We were both made into fools in their story, and I realized this wasn't just betrayal. It was humiliation. After I got off the phone with David, I didn't calm down. I got quiet. The kind of quiet that happens when something inside you snaps into place. Ryan came home around 6, tossing his keys in the bowl by the door, like it was any other day. He bent to pet the dog. He asked, "What's for dinner?" Like my world hadn't been ripped open. I didn't answer that. I waited until he stepped into the living room, until we were both standing there with the TV off, and the air too still. I said, "Since counseling, have you talked to Lauren?" He didn't blink. No, just like that. Clean, confident. I nodded once. No yelling, no shaking. I walked to the coffee table, picked up my phone, and turned the volume all the way up. Then I hit play. Ryan's own voice filled our living room. Warm, intimate, unmistakable, saying things he'd never dared say to my face. And he stood there listening to himself get exposed. The color drained from Ryan's face so fast. It was almost scary. His mouth opened, then closed. He looked at the phone like it was a weapon. Then his eyes snapped to me and his voice changed sharp. Defensive. Are you tracking me? I didn't flinch. I surprised myself. I'm not tracking you, I said. I'm surviving you. He took a step closer, like he could physically block the sound that was already out in the room. Megan. It's not he started, then switched lanes. It was stupid. It was a mistake. I kept my voice low. A mistake doesn't have a schedule. He swallowed and started giving me the truth in crumbs. Little admissions, half sentences, long pauses, and then the one that made my stomach drop again. He said they'd been having sex in the car. I stared at him. My hands were ice cold. In the car, I asked. In our car, Ryan just stood there, staring at the floor, and that silence was his answer. That night, I didn't stay in our bed. I couldn't. I closed the bedroom door quietly, like I was trying not to wake up the version of me that still wanted to pretend. And I made up the couch with a throw blanket and a pillow that smelled like clean laundry. Not him. The dog didn't understand. She paced the hallway, nails clicking on the floor, going back and forth between the bedroom door and the living room, like she was searching for the family she knew. Every time she looked at me, my chest tightened. I opened my phone and sent the audio files to my private email, then backed them up to the cloud. Not to be dramatic, just so the truth couldn't be erased with one swipe. Then I called a therapist and left a voicemail with my voice shaking. And I texted my best friend, "Can you come over? I need someone here." That was the first real choice I made. Not to save the picture of a marriage, to save myself. The days after were worse in a different way. Not louder, just colder. Ryan acted like the house was still normal, like we'd had a bad argument and now it was time to move on. He'd ask, "Did you eat?" Like that was care. He'd sit on the couch and scroll sports highlights, half watching TV, half living in his phone. Sometimes he'd laugh under his breath at a message and tilt the screen away from me without even thinking. I started noticing how little he looked at my face, how quickly he switched the subject when I went quiet, how easily he walked through the kitchen like nothing had changed, like our marriage wasn't bleeding out on the floor. And that's when the pain sharpened. It wasn't just that I might lose him. It was realizing he didn't seem afraid of losing me at all. I was in the same house, in the same rooms, with the same last name, and I'd never felt more invisible. After watching Ryan move around our house like nothing mattered, I did the one thing I'd been avoiding. I made it real on paper. I met with a lawyer in a small office that smelled like coffee and printer toner. Nothing dramatic. Just a calm woman with a legal pad who asked simple questions. How long we'd been married, what we owned, what was joint, what was mine. She talked about the house, the accounts, the dog, and what separation actually looks like. Words like assets and equity landed heavy in my stomach, because they turned my marriage into math. I took notes, not like a student, like someone trying not to drown. When I walked back into my car, my hands were steady in a new way. Not okay, just focused. At home, I stood in front of the shelf with our framed photos. Weddings, holidays, smiling faces that didn't know what was coming. I slid a few frames into a drawer. Then I lifted our wedding picture off the wall. It was a small move. It felt like an earthquake. That night, I didn't bring it up. I didn't soften it. I waited until the kitchen was quiet, until the dog was curled up like she'd decided to stop picking sides, and I said it plain. "Ryan, I want a divorce." He blinked, like I'd spoken in another language. "Are you serious?" I didn't argue. I didn't list every lie. I didn't beg him to finally understand. I just looked at him and said, "I listened to 6 hours of you choosing someone else. 6 hours. That's not confusion. That's a decision." He didn't cry. He didn't collapse. He just stood there, jaw tight, like he was more annoyed than heartbroken, and that told me everything I still needed to know. "So here's what happens next," I said, my voice steady, even though my legs felt weak. "You're going to make a plan to move out, for the first time." I wasn't asking to be loved. I was setting a boundary like an adult, and as I said it, one thought kept flashing behind my eyes. He's not going to leave quietly. My first therapy session wasn't dramatic. It was just me in a chair, staring at my hands, saying what I'd been choking on for weeks. I feel stupid, like I should have known, like trusting my own husband made me weak. My therapist said, trusting the person you loved doesn't make you stupid. Betrayal is the failure, not your faith. And I realized I'd been carrying his choices like they were my character flaw. When I looked back, the signs were there, late nights, the phone face down, the work chat smile. But love makes you explain things away, because you're trying to keep your life standing. I wasn't blind. I was committed, and my gut had been warning me the whole time. I just kept telling it to be quiet. I also learned something sharp. I'm sorry. You're hurt. Isn't the same as I'm sorry I did this. Real remorse owns the damage. It doesn't manage your reactions. So I stopped competing in a game I never agreed to play. I chose 3 basics. I won't negotiate again. Safety, love, and respect not as hopes, as requirements. Now my healing looks small and real. I eat. I sleep. I show up to work. I take the calls from friends, and I let the house be quiet without calling it lonely, and I'm not fighting to be chosen inside my own marriage anymore. All right. Let May be painfully clear. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a pattern, and it showed up fast. A stranger asked you something stupid at a bar, you said no, and Mark turned you from wife to suspect. That's red flag number 1, suspicion. Without proof. Then he started the classic toxic combo, moving the goalpost, demanding the truth after you already gave it, and treating your calm as evidence. That's not concern. That's control wearing a suit. And when someone blocks the exit, when your I need air becomes why are you running, that's not love. That's a power test. The moment he rewrote the story, you pushed me, you escalated. That's gaslighting 1. Oh, 1. Not loud, not messy, just cold. Tidy cruelty. So here's your takeaway straight up. Your no is a full sentence. You don't audition for basic respect. You don't negotiate reality with someone who benefits from you doubting yourself. If you're hearing this and your stomach drops, trust that. Red flags don't get greener with time. To the villain of this story, karma doesn't need your permission. It just keeps receipts. And to you, sweetheart, this debt, May clears it. But remember, these eyes are always watching. Don't let your name end up on May's blacklist next episode. Hit subscribe, because around here, justice doesn't show up late. It shows up ready. A final note from the library. While these stories find their roots in the halls of Reddit, they are artistically reimagined to speak to the heart. Any likeness to reality is mere coincidence. The emotions, however, are very real. Walk with empathy, and let justice lead the way. Thank you for watching.